yonder, climbing high into the sun. Here they come, zooming to meet our thunder. Atom boys, give her the gun. Now
Hello, this is John Aker, call sign Nomad. This is my YouTube channel. The top line of the splash screen is their YouTube is calling a handle, part of the URL to find this channel, youtube.com/@John Aker, aviating author. And note the dots, the periods between the last four words. That forms the handle. This introduction is the first of more than a dozen videos that I generated that follow my autobiography, recollections, my life in and out of the military. And they will represent planes I flew during the 18 years of active flying status I was on during my 20-year military career as a United States Air Force pilot. I found software that runs in the computer flight simulator world, matching airplanes that I flew in real life. And I narrate them with a narrative stream of consciousness, stories of what was happening in my life during the times when I flew those airplanes. And, well, they're war stories, you know, of course. And in war stories, you have to be careful because the first liar ain't got a chance. You'll learn a little bit about computer flight simulators and videos, the equipment I use to get it done, and we'll have some fun. And check your six back there. I might be on your tail. Nomad is back. Let's take a look at the rest of this series.
Here's that listing of the videos that we'll be going through. Note the left column, that highlighted one, tells us we're going to be taking off from sunny Florida, heading west to West Texas, Big Spring, Texas, where I'll transition from complete flying pilot training and transition from tail draggers to tricycle gear, from piston engines to jets, in the T33A Shooting Star built by Lockheed Aircraft. And let's move on into the video. You're looking at a T33A jet trainer, single engine, 2-seat, tandem. This is John Aker, call sign Nomad, back with you. Graduated from primary pilot training and moved on to basic flight training. Webb Air Force Base, Big Spring, Texas, West Texas. The scenery is a little sparse around here, but that's West Texas. It was mostly brown. Tell you a little bit about the T-33. Since we were allowed to go over 10,000 feet in this airplane, we had to wear an oxygen mask the entire time. That was some fun getting used to. The nickname for this trainer was the Shooting Star, or the T-Bird. It's been used all over the world. It did have speed brakes. You just saw them pop down from the belly of the airplane, bring them back up. You better have some forward stick, holding some forward stick when you pop the brakes, air brakes. Not bad if you're solo, but a little tough on a wingman if you don't call brakes and hold pressure. Those are good. The airplane was not capable of Mach 1. In fact, if you got close to Mach 1, you started to get an aileron buzz. The ailerons would flutter. And if you got too deep into it, the nose would tuck under. So they put boosted ailerons on them to help you, and a strip on the leading edge of the wing to try to forestall any problems, but it didn't work all the time. Good friend of mine was flying solo one day. He got too close to Mach 1. The bird started the ailerons buzzed, the nose started to tuck under. There were two versions of the throttle in the planes we flew. On one of them, the speed brake switch was on the very bottom, and you triggered it, squeezed it with your little finger. On the newer models, it was a toggle switch set on top of the throttle. And my friend was lucky. He was flying one of the new airplanes, because when the nose tucked, he got negative G's. He said his head touched the canopy. He reached down as far as he could, and with his longest finger was able to scrape that speed brake switch to the open position, and she came out of the aileron buzz. Probably saved his own life in an airplane. The plane's an offshoot. It's a two-seat version of the P-80 or the F-80 flown in Korea. First single-engine jet fighter that made it to Korea. Of course, it wasn't the best. I want to note a couple of things. You can see fuel caps, 4 of them on top of the wings. Outside here was another cap on this one. 230-gallon wing tanks. We carried 100 gallons. You couldn't do over 2 Gs with fuel in the wing tanks, in the tip tanks. There was one filler cap up here for the fuselage tank, and you notice this dark area? That leads to the plenum chamber. That's where the explosions are going off in this jet engine. This was the plenum chamber, a spring-loaded door to give you more air, more volume of air at low airspeed and on the ground taxi-in. But if you didn't cap that fuselage tank just right, you got a leak out of it, the fuel would go directly into the plenum chamber, out and around it, and it went boom. So you want to make sure if you missed all other gas caps, make sure that fuselage tank was closed. And they finally moved the third landing gear from the tail end of the airplane to the nose. She's a tricycle airplane. Okay, we're going to taxi on out to the runway. T33 did not have nose wheel steering. In the sim you do. But in the airplane you control your taxi with toe brakes. And if you got too tight a turn, the nose wheel cocked. I mean, it was almost over to a 90-degree angle. And he couldn't get it out without help. Usually it took 1 or 2 crew chiefs bouncing the nose. I taxied out of the parking spot, and Bill Ayers, my instructor, call sign Val, cocked the nose wheel on the first turn out of the parking. And Bill says, I got it. He got a crew chief to bounce it out, and he got the nose wheel straight, and he taxied up to on out of the parking area and made a left turn and cocked the nose wheel himself. I said, Bill, I told you those brakes were spongy. So I got away with that one. Let's close that canopy. We're coming up on the runway. Webb originally had 2 north-south runways, 1735 when it was closed and they turned it over to the civilians, they left one of the runways to go to pot. Just kept one of them open. Okay, we're going to take a little different tack with this series, with this video. Instead of all one, I've created a couple of breakpoints in here where we can save time by finishing up on one series and going on to something else I think is maybe of interest to you. Good thing is it's not the original, the real airplane. I would have cocked that nose wheel so bad right there. Excuse me, I'm just getting a couple of controls set. Okay, we just got inside. It's a nice looking instrument panel. Unfortunately, not much on the instrument panel works besides the turn and slip indicator, the attitude indicator, climb, altimeter, airspeed, but none of the compasses work. There is a whiskey compass up there we'll use a little bit later. Okay, let's put a notch of flaps down and add some power. This is a centrifugal thrust engine as opposed to the newer models with axial flows. You could not throttle burst this engine. If you did, if you went to 0 to 100% very rapidly, she'd probably just do compressor stalls and quit. That's airborne. Let's get the gear up. Get those flaps up. There are two cockpits with it. This one's a little prettier, although it's not much more, it's no more functional than the other one is. Elevation at Webb was about 2,500 feet. So let's take about a 30-degree. Oh, we got a little traffic down there. 11 o'clock low. Fortunately, he was under us. See if we can get her turned back around here towards the airfield. Let's get it, see it out there. Slow down. Dirty her up. Some gear and some flaps down. Pick those speed brakes back up. yellow out here. Let's slip back in the cockpit and see what it looks like. It's
Sync rate.
Oh, and this one I forgot to tell you, they put in this little voice to help you. I call him Bitchin' Benny. Later models of fighters, it's a gal's voice, and that's Bitchin' Betty.
Don't sync.
Well,
Don't sync.
If we don't sync, we're not
Don't
going.
sync.
We're not going to get down to the runway.
Don't sync.
So hush up,
Don't
fella.
sync. Don't sync.
I got to go in and figure
Don't
out
sync.
how to turn his voice
Don't
off.
sync.
We're not syncing.
Don't sync.
We got a
Don't sync.
We got a nice rate of descent.
Don't sync.
That's
Don't
600-700
sync.
feet a minute.
Don't sync.
A little bit low according
Don't
to
sync.
the VASI indicators.
Don't sync. Don't sync. Don't sync.
And in Flight Sim 10,
Don't sync.
This is Flight Sim 10.
Don't sync.
FSX.
Don't sync.
And the
Don't sync.
scenery's a little sparse out here. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Don't sync.
Did you see that? They cleared me to land. With an airliner on the runway. So I'm just going to pull her up here in a go around, and we will call it stops for this portion of the flight. I'm going to pause it and step outside and see if I can see if that airliner is still on the runway. Yeah, there he is. Right down there. He's on the roll. If we'd have landed, we'd have crawled right up his tailpipes. Okay, let's call this session to a halt here. And I'm working on the map I have over here to the side. FSX connect. All right. See, I've got a cheat sheet. I've got a map on a second monitor sitting to my right. And I can tell where I am in relation to the airport. I know it's a cheat sheet, but it helps. I'm going to go back and look for another flight to load. T33 night on a taxiway. And it's a little difficult to see. Maybe we can do that with the magic of gamma. Bring my video card up with the gamma setting. And we can see her a little better. Pretty much like the last time, except there are no lights out there. This is to graduate and get my wings. I needed a night wing takeoff. We were scheduled this night, and I was number 4 on the flight. Lead would line up in the middle of the runway with his number 2, his second in his element, number 2 on his right wing. On the taxi out, our element lead, number 3, aborted. And Bill was, my instructor, was scrambling. We missed this. It was a night flight with nothing but darkness and no squares we could fill. So Bill called the tower, and he requested that we be able to join with lead in 2 as a 3-ship flight. The tower cleared us. Bill had a little something up his sleeve. As we were taxiing out, he said, lead and 2 are already, he asked them to hold on the runway. So they're sitting on the runway holding, and Bill says, taxi wide, line up on lead's left wing. I don't believe the tower knew that's what they cleared Bill for, but that's what he told them. He assumed they got it right. Now, I cannot, in this sim, set up the other airplanes. That night I didn't get in the dirt like we did here. It's that nose wheel steering is so hard to control. So I eased up on lead's left wing. And as such, lead gave the signal. Wind them up. We had 100% power on. Lead gave the signal to release brakes. And we're off. Probably the only night 3-shipper ever to take off at Webb. I'm watching lead's nose. His nose wheel comes off the ground. And it's time to rotate. Lead's gear comes up. I punch the gear up. Clean her up. Lead comes back to 98%, so we got 1% or 2 to play with to stay on his wing. It was an interesting night. Okay. Now that it's dark out here, I want to show you another dark night. And I'm going to again pause the simulator and load another flight. Towards the end of training, I needed 30 more minutes of night flying. Any kind, anything. Let's find our T33 at night. And I'm going to leave it paused here. For some reason, my instructor was busy, and they put me up with a young banty rooster, second lieutenant instructor. His call sign was Rooster, and he was. It was a great stick. Don't get me wrong. So he said, have you done unusual attitudes? I said, yeah. I'm in the front seat. A lot of times we did those in the back seat, and so we had to recover on instruments. And I learned valuable lessons from that. One time I got vertigo so bad I thought I was going to puke, and my instructor Bill there says, fly out of it. So I'm up here with Rooster, and he says, no, I've never done unusual attitudes at night. Nose high. You roll some bank into it, let the nose fall, and add full power because you're losing airspeed. If it's the nose low situation, you roll the wings level and bring the nose up, adding power as needed to get back to level flight. So I've got my head down, my eyes closed, I'm not watching anything outside, and Rooster was smooth on the controls. He handed it to me. And this was what I saw out my windscreen. I saw the horizon. And I saw a few lights down here and a few lights up here, because that's about all you see. And the number of lights on the ground is barely equal to the number of lights in the sky in West Texas at night. So I look at it and says, holy cow, I'm almost wings level, slightly nose down. And I continue with that thought for a second or two. before we started feeling light in the seat and the negative G's getting us. This is where he gave it to me. Straight inverted, slightly nose down. I rolled her level. And I didn't do this visually. I did this on the cockpit, on the instruments inside, because I've always said there's visual flying rules and there's night VFR. You can fly night VFR, but there's no such animal. If you're not good on instruments, you fly night VFR, you're going to turn into a black spot on the ground, with you and the airplane in a deep hole. So that was the story of me and Rooster doing unusual attitudes at night. Like I said, he was a good stick. He was so smooth, I didn't realize I was upside down. It makes a believer out of you. You fly the instruments and do what they tell you. Okay, that's a quickie. Let's pause here one more time, and we're going to load a new one. Load a flight. We're looking for J.B. Thomas. Okay, we're back in the bird at 20,000 feet. I'm going to pause for a second here so we can look down below us. That big lake down there was a landmark we used, because we did a lot of our work up here, flying solo, acrobatics, whatever. And that's Lake J.B. Thomas. It's about 30 miles north-northeast of Webb. And in this section I'm going to talk about SFOs, simulated flameout patterns, especially no flap flameout patterns. The T-Bird was a pretty clean airplane. She'd glide well. And according to the book, the -1, we knew that from Lake J.B. Thomas to the airfield was 30 miles, and the book said we could glide 40. So if anything happened, and we had at least 20,000 feet of altitude, we could make Webb at high key for a flame-out pattern. So we're going to unpause her here, step into the cockpit, check. Oops. I just put the throttle and idle to simulate a flame-out pattern. I'm going to hold the nose up till we got about 160 knots of airspeed, and then lower the nose gently and try to maintain 160, because that's best glide speed. We want another view. We can check it because the heading we want is about 220 to make it to Webb. It's pretty close, and we've got about 160 knots. You get back outside here. We had no idle. I wanted to tell you about this one because this actually happened to one of my friends. Over Lake J.B. Thomas at about 20,000 feet, the shaft and the accessory case sheared. I don't know what all ran off the accessory case, but it was almost everything. My friend had an unboosted stick in his hand and a battery, and that was it. No flaps, no air brakes. With luck, he could drop the gear manually and gravity would put it down. He hoped. Well, let's get back in the cockpit and see what we're doing. Try to keep that airspeed at 120 so we get a good ride. We want to reach Webb at about 8,000 feet. High key for a flame-out pattern is 5,500 feet above the ground, 2,500 feet of elevation. 8,000 feet is what we're shooting for. We got about 10,000 feet to go, and we're headed for Webb. My friend's battery lasted long enough to call Webb and tell him he had a flame out. He was going to try an air start. He tried a couple air starts and the battery was dead. So he didn't have a radio. It must have been quiet as hell in that cockpit. But he's got altitude. He should make it. I got to tell you, we had to fly a simulated flame out pattern, a no flapper, with our instructor. They wouldn't allow us to do it solo. So there's two. You hit high key, that's 8,000 feet. You went low key, it's going to be 6,000 feet MSL. That's after turning 180 degrees. So you're on downwind. I remember Bill telling me, fly till you know you cannot make it back to the airport, and then fly about 30 seconds longer than that, because she's clean and she's not going to slow down. I know it was scary, but we did it, and we cleaned it up and of course brought the power back in for the landing. But I with his instruction, I would have made it. Unfortunately, my friend had never gotten the demonstration he was supposed to get. Somehow it slipped through the cracks. And after everything was over, they came to him with a grade slip showing that he had been demonstrated a no flapper. And he asked us, his classmates, what should I do? And our advice was, that's your only ammunition for what you had to do with that airplane. I said, don't sign it. So we're going to try this. And we're down coming up on 15,000 feet, and we got a little ways to go. Staying pretty well at the runway. Let's use this other cockpit and check the heading. Yeah, we're about on for the runway. I know we didn't. My friend never talked about what was going through his mind coming down. I just knew it had to be damn quiet sitting there, trying to keep everything steady. Unboosted ailerons, no electric trim, no way to slow her down or speed her up, except trading altitude for airspeed and airspeed for altitude, which is not a good trade in these times. So we're trying to keep an eye on the airspeed and the vertical velocity indicator, because we should be getting around 1,500 feet per minute rate of descent, which really ain't bad considering you don't have an engine pushing the thing. It kind of reminds me of our one of our ground school instructors, the first day in class is on the engine. He says, you know how a jet engine operates? And we said, no. He says, well, up front it sucks air in, and in the back it blows air out, and that's what makes you go. Okay, we're at 12,500. Let's see if we can see a runway out there somewhere. Can't pick it out yet. Whoop. Let the airspeed build up a little bit. That means we lost some of our glide. We're descending faster than we want to. Let's bring that nose back up, try to get that 160 knots again. runway's just left of the nose out there somewhere. I can't pick it out from here visually. Scenery is just not good enough in a flight sim. Yeah, we're hitting a little bumpy air on the way down. How are we doing? Still got a decent rate of descent more than we want, but we're about on glide, best glide. Okay, looks like we made high key just about 8,000 feet. We're going to start our turn to 270, low key, downwind. And we should be about 6,000 at that point. We're halfway through the turn now. And the nose got a little low. We picked up airspeed. So trim off some of that airspeed. Finish this turn to downwind. I'm going to drop the gear here and hope gravity takes care of us. It looks like a winner. We've got gear. Since we're simulating the simulation, my friend would not have had those 3 green lights at the top left of the instrument panel there. He had no electricity. He had no battery. No generators running. Okay, let's look out here and see where we are. Do we think we can make it from here? With luck, we hope we can. Halfway through this turn, we should be roughly 4,000 feet, which is halfway through the turn of final. And we're keeping trying to keep our airspeed around 160 at best glide, even with gear down. And this is where my friend, he'd caught up with my friend, since he had no idea how long she would glide. He didn't even come close to touching down at 10,000 feet of runway. In fact, he was about a mile past the runway when he finally touched down in the boondocks. I think the gear collapsed on him. Okay. We overshot final a little bit. Trying to walk her down. Trying to get the nose down without gaining too much altitude, or too much airspeed. A little better shape if I had pulled the turn that last half of the turn to final.
Too low. Flaps.
Sink rate.
We don't have flaps, Benny.
Sink rate.
Sorry about that.
Too low. Flaps.
We're coming around.
Too low. Flaps.
Hush. We're going to make it. I
Too
believe.
low. Flaps.
We're going to make it.
Too low. Flaps.
Okay. I've got brakes. And I've got speed brakes. my friend did not have. He said he was a mile past the end of the runway when he touched down. Kind of came to a stop in the middle of a cloud of dust. Blew the canopy. It's independent. It just has explosive squibs. Okay, we're going to park her here, about where we started our journey. It's hot in West Texas in the afternoon. Let's open the canopy. A friend of mine, I never did try to do anything to him. He graduated, got his wings. I saw him 40 years later at a reunion. So, good on him. This is the Nomad. I've got her parked here. I'm going to turn it over to the guy in the back seat. Next time out, we'll be moving further west of here to the Luke Air Force Base outside Phoenix, Arizona. And we'll take a trip around the pattern in the F-84F. Introduction to Gunnery School. Keep your eyes on a swivel. Keep your head on a swivel. Keep your eyes on your 6. I might be back there. There's Nomads out.
If you enjoyed some of this material, you might reach up there and click that like button. Want to come back, hit the subscribe to this channel. This is John Aker, call sign Nomad. Flying flight simulators based on my career as a U.S. Air Force pilot.